Beneath the silent waters of the Eurotas River and within the shadowed forests of Laconia, an extraordinary civilization was born, a civilization whose true origins remain shrouded in mystery and ancient whispers. What secret forces shaped the Spartans into the most feared people of their time? And could it be that Sparta's legendary strength was never meant for conquest, but for something far older and more terrifying? Before we dive into the secrets of ancient Sparta, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all the mysteries we unveil on Best of History and Mythology. Beneath the veiled mists of the Eurotas River, where the water moves with a slow, hypnotic current, the first murmurings of Sparta were born. Ancient travelers spoke of a land untouched by time, where the river's voice seemed to whisper secrets only the brave dared to hear. The Eurotas did not merely nourish the land, it shaped the very soul of a people destined to become legends. Long before marble temples and gleaming shields, the valley of Laconia was wild and untamed. Dark forests crowded the shores, their twisted branches forming natural tunnels that led to nowhere, or perhaps to places long forgotten by the world. Strange stones carved with symbols unknown, even to the elders, lined hidden paths along the riverbanks, remnants of a civilization even older than myth. The earliest Spartans did not build grand cities. Instead, they clustered in shadowy villages, hidden from the open plains. Their homes were simple, almost primitive, yet their rituals spoke of a knowledge deeper than mere survival. Night after night, under the gaze of unfamiliar constellations, fires burned low as chants in an unknown tongue echoed through the valley. Some say that it was not conquest or fortune that drew the first settlers here, but something far more cryptic. Legends speak of an ancient calling, an unseen force that lured them to the banks of the Eurotas. A summons, perhaps, from the earth itself. Others whisper of strange lights seen hovering above the river at night, of dreams that drove entire families to abandon their past lives and wander south until they reached these sacred waters. The river carried more than water, it carried memories of a forgotten time. To drink from the Eurotas was to bind oneself to its ancient mystery, to take a silent oath of loyalty to forces unseen. Generations later, even as Sparta rose to dominance, the elders would still gather in secret at the river's edge, paying homage to something older than gods, older than man. Artifacts pulled from the riverbed, carved bones, blackened iron blades unlike anything crafted by known civilizations, hint at a hidden past. Yet no scroll or historian could explain the origin of these relics. Mainstream archaeologists dismissed them as anomalies. But among the few who dared look deeper, a chilling theory emerged. Sparta was not merely born, it was summoned. As the mist thickens and the river flows ever onward, the Eurotas keeps its secrets well. Only those willing to listen beyond the roar of history can hear its ancient whispers. And even then, the river only tells part of the story. In a world where power was jealously guarded by a single ruler, Sparta stood alone with its baffling system of dual kingship. Two kings, equal in power, each with their own lineage, yet bound to serve a single destiny. Ancient historians like Herodotus speculated endlessly about its origins, but the true story remains cloaked in shadow. The traditional tale speaks of twin brothers descended from Heracles, dividing the crown to avoid bloodshed. Yet archaeological findings hint at a more unsettling truth. In the ruins of ancient Amyclae and Therapyne, inscriptions suggest the kingship was never meant to be shared peacefully. Instead, it may have been imposed by an ancient oath, one sworn in terror, not unity. Old legends murmur of a time when an unseen force demanded balance within the Spartan bloodline. If the equilibrium between the two kings faltered, disaster would fall upon the city. Some whisper that the dual monarchy was not a political experiment, but a protective measure against an ancient curse, one that preyed on absolute power. Each king was bound by ritual obligations, never to travel far from Sparta at the same time, never to wage war together unless fate demanded it. These odd restrictions suggest they were not merely leaders, but guardians of an ancient pact whose terms have long since been forgotten. Stranger still, every coronation of a new king was accompanied by mysterious ceremonies in hidden chambers beneath the temple of Artemis Orthia. Foreign emissaries were barred from attending. Songs were sung in languages unrecorded elsewhere in Greece. Priests veiled their faces, chanting words only the initiated were allowed to hear. If an entire people built their society not to dominate others, but to defend against an ancient fear, would you consider them heroes or prisoners of their own destiny? We are curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Even today, scholars remain puzzled by Sparta's rigid insistence on dual kingship for over 7 centuries. If one king died in battle or illness, a successor was immediately raised, not out of necessity, but to maintain a sacred balance that could never be broken. Perhaps the most chilling detail comes from a fragment of an ancient Laconian tablet, barely surviving centuries of erosion. It reads simply, "Two shall stand, lest the silence devour them both." What silence? What devouring force lurked in the shadows of Sparta's early days? The answers remain lost in the mists of time, but the twin kings stood as living symbols of a city that feared something even more than death: imbalance. The name Lycurgus stirs echoes through history like the flicker of a dying flame, an elusive figure, part lawgiver, part myth. According to tradition, he appeared in Sparta when it teetered on the brink of chaos, offering salvation through a radical transformation. But what Lycurgus truly brought was not just a code of laws, it was a complete reordering of the human soul. Strangely, none of his reforms were ever written down. The Great Retra, as it was called, existed only by spoken word and sacred memory. This deliberate refusal to record his laws raises an unsettling question. Were these principles too dangerous to be captured in ink? Ancient sources hint that Lycurgus vanished mysteriously after introducing his reforms, traveling to the Oracle of Delphi and never returning. Some claim he starved himself to death to ensure his laws would never be altered. Others whisper darker theories, that his disappearance was no accident, but an exile forced by powers he dared to awaken. Among the most chilling aspects of the Great Retra was its demand for total obedience without the comfort of written rules. By removing all tangible records, Lycurgus ensured that memory itself would become a weapon, shaping Spartan minds into instruments of loyalty beyond reason. Hidden rites initiated young Spartans into this oral tradition. Blindfolded and isolated for days, they were forced to recite the laws until their own identities blurred. Mistakes were punished not with words, but with silence, a silence more devastating than any blow. Archaeological findings at ancient Spartan temples reveal strange inscriptions, cryptic markings that match no known alphabet. Some historians speculate they are remnants of the original teachings of Lycurgus, a lost symbolic language meant only for the initiated. Over centuries, the line between man and myth blurred. Some began to believe Lycurgus had never been mortal at all, but an avatar of an older, forgotten deity. An emissary sent not to govern, but to bind Sparta to a fate crafted long before humans first settled the Eurotas Valley. The unwritten laws became the invisible walls of Sparta. Walls stronger than stone, built not to defend against enemies, but to cage something far more terrifying, the restless spirit of chaos that once threatened to consume them all. Enjoying the journey into the hidden past of Sparta? Join our growing community by subscribing to Best of History and Mythology, leaving a like, and hitting the notification bell so you never miss a glimpse into the mysteries of ancient worlds. At the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families and delivered into the Agoge, a brutal education system cloaked in secrecy. To outsiders, it appeared as nothing more than intense military training. But buried beneath the physical trials lay something far more disturbing, a calculated reshaping of the human spirit. The Agoge was designed not just to harden bodies, but to erase weakness of thought, emotion, and will. Discipline was absolute. Hunger, cold, pain. These were not misfortunes, but deliberate tools of instruction. Every hardship was carefully engineered to produce warriors who would obey without question and endure without end. Yet behind the carefully cultivated image of Spartan resilience, darker elements thrived. Nighttime exercises took boys into the wild forests beyond the city, where unseen eyes watched them from the shadows. Success meant survival. Failure often meant disappearance, stories that Sparta never officially recorded. Some accounts suggest that the Agoge was not originally created for military excellence at all. Whispers of its earliest rituals describe visions induced by secret herbs, forcing initiates to confront spectral images of forgotten ancestors and ancient foes. These rites were banned from public knowledge, erased from Spartan chronicles, but clues remain in fragmented oral traditions and forbidden songs. Survivors of the Agoge were not merely stronger, they were transformed. Their very humanity was stripped and rebuilt according to a blueprint lost to modern understanding. Historians still debate whether this transformation was aimed at building perfect soldiers or at containing something even more dangerous. Stranger still, the final trials of the Agoge were never openly discussed. Graduates bore mysterious scars that did not match the wounds of combat. Their eyes held a distant, haunted gaze, as if they had seen something during their ordeal that could never be spoken aloud. The Agoge was not a school. It was not a training camp. It was an alchemical forge for the soul, fueled by ancient fears and protected by layers of silence so thick that even today, their full truth remains beyond our grasp. Do you believe that forgotten rituals and ancient covenants still influence the fate of entire civilizations today? We are curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. In an ancient world where women were often hidden behind walls and silence, Sparta stood alone. Here, women moved with a freedom that shocked visiting Greeks. They owned land, commanded respect, and spoke boldly in public. But this empowerment was not born from a spirit of equality. It hid a far older, darker purpose. From the moment a Spartan girl was born, she was prepared not for subservience, but for dominance in her own realm. Physical training hardened their bodies, while secret gatherings taught them skills few outside Sparta would ever suspect. Mothers whispered ancient songs into their daughters' ears, melodies believed to trace back to civilizations long buried beneath Laconian soil. Spartan women were expected to bear strong sons, but fertility was only part of their mysterious duty. Some rituals, recorded only in fragmented poems and forgotten epigrams, suggest that women performed sacred rites meant to bind the spirit of Sparta itself. During nights when the moon vanished from the sky, groups of young women, veiled and armed, gathered at hidden sanctuaries deep in the hills. What they did there remains unknown. Visitors from Athens and Corinth describe these women as proud, almost otherworldly. Yet they missed the deeper truth. Spartan women were guardians of an ancient covenant, a silent pact that no man could break. They controlled the heartbeat of Sparta, ensuring that its lifeblood, the spirit of discipline, resilience, and silent terror, never faded. The structure of Spartan society placed women in powerful yet invisible positions. Marriages were arranged not through lavish ceremonies, but through secret abductions, symbolic reenactments of ancient rites, whose true meanings had been lost even to the Spartans themselves. Historians puzzled for centuries over the strange independence of Spartan women. Some blamed it on the frequent absence of men at war. But buried myths hint at another cause, an understanding that if the women of Sparta faltered, the very foundations of the state would collapse. In the end, the role of Spartan women was not just to nurture warriors. It was to serve as the last, unyielding line of defense against forces even the strongest hoplites could not face. Forces older than Sparta, older than Greece itself. History is not written in ink, but whispered through the stones we have forgotten. Thank you for watching. See you on our next journey, here on Best of History and Mythology.